Alright everybody, we're back inside of Unity today. I'm Cracked Joe. A user on YouTube requested that I make this video. It's something that's simple, easy to demonstrate, so I figured I'd go ahead and let him see how to do it. User's name was Jackson Oldenburg. So if anyone else has a request and it's something that I can do easily and demonstrate, then I'd be happy to do more things like this. In this case, he asked for a script that spawns a cube every second, and then that cube falls. So I did a few extra little things on top of that, but here's the general idea. First thing you need to do, as usual with Unity, is set up your scene. So here in my scene view, I went to 2D mode just because I thought this was something that could kind of be demonstrated as like a 2D type game. Maybe the cubes are falling and you're clicking on them and deleting them, or applying a force upwards or something, as opposed to just having them fall. So I made a plane and I rotated it so that the cubes would bounce whenever they react, because we're going to do this with a rigid body in order to create the falling motion. Then I created a cube, I gave it a little material, nothing fancy. I added a rigid body, which is all you need to have it fall, and make sure that use gravity here is checked. And then I added constant force so that I could do, so that I could access this in the script and have it rotate randomly based off physics. Not something that has to be done, obviously. So, quick little demonstration of how everything works. Oh, and I created an empty game object and applied the script to that game object. And this is just the object that will call the script that's going to spawn the cubes. This could be anywhere in the scene. It just needs a transform and the script on it. So hit play. You see after 1 second, and then continually 1 second after that, these cubes will be created and fall. So they're created here at along this axis at 10 units in Y, and that's an arbitrary value. You can set that to whatever in the script. Let's go ahead and open up MonoDevelop right over here. So make it a little bigger. Pretty simple little script here. I have a couple variables that I've created. We obviously need to access the game object itself. In order to access it here inside of Unity in the inspector, we need to make it public. So I've made it public, type game object, and I've named it cube object, and you'll see over here in the inspector we now have cube object. So after this is compiled, this will show up and you'll have cube object. And then I created a public float of of spawn speed, and I set it to a default value of 1f. You need an f if it's a float value, otherwise Unity thinks that it's an integer. So in this case 1f, and then I have another variable here where I'm just going to create a reference to constant force, essentially. So I need to add this as a variable so that I can define it. There's lots of ways that you could create this spawning script. This is probably the simplest way. I'm just using an invoke repeating. You could do this with enumeration and coroutines. It's a little bit more involved, and I figured since this example was fairly simple, to probably just stick with the easiest way to do it. Again, really quick and easy. We need a script. We need a method here that is going to spawn. So I created a void spawn function here, and we need to know where it's going to spawn, right? So we'll have to get a vector 3 at its location in the world, or if this game is purely 2D, you could use a vector 2 and just get the x and y values and not the z. I'm not even really using the z, so I could have done this with the vector too. So we need the spawns location, and then we're just gonna create it. We call it clone here because it's using that prefab and creating a clone of it in the world. And then this is also just the name of that object. So we could call this anything. It really could be anything. Calling it clone because that tends to be kind of the standard form that you'll see online and that other people use. And then we have to destroy it. So after 3 seconds, the cubes destroy so that they don't overpopulate the scene. And you could destroy them in a number of ways. You could have a trigger that destroys them, or a button press, or a bullet, another projectile that hits it. Anything you want, really. So we just run this here. We get game object and instantiate it, and then we instantiate needs the game object that we're going to instantiate. So here that's cube object, and that's what we'll set in the inspector. Sorry, my mouse is flickering from the software. I can't see it. So right here where I've dropped the cube object into cube object, that's where it goes. Okay, this is really annoying. Technical difficulties. Where's my mouse cursor? There. Hopefully you guys can see the mouse cursor in the stream, but I can't on my screen. So then we use the variable that we just defined, spawn location. So that's where it goes. So we give it the object itself, we give it the spawn location, and we give it a rotation. And again, I'm using quaternion identity, which is the same thing I used in the last thing, which is just its local rotation to itself. That's the easiest way to think of it. So it's essentially not rotated. And then going back to the constant force up here, actually we don't need to talk about that right now. So let's actually turn that off. And here in the update function. So two forward slashes is a comment for anyone that doesn't understand that or know that. Okay. So without the constant force, we play, and I forgot I have it assigned here. So those values are 0. You can see that the cube is straight and it just falls until it impacts that angled plane, and then the rigid body simulation starts to take effect. So that's all you want. You just want the cube to fall. You don't need any of this constant force stuff. So let's turn it back on. And so what I've added here is we have the variable constant force, random force, and then we set random force to cube object dot get component constant force, and not just get component constant force, because doing get component constant force without cube object would get it from the empty game object spawner, which does not have a rigid body or anything attached to it. So we have to access the game object that we're looking for first, and then we'll get its component of constant force. And then we access random force.torque, as you can see in Unity over here. When you look at constant force, you have force, relative force, torque, and relative torque. So you just put whatever you want here. So this could have been force. Force is a vector 3, and torque is a vector 3. So we know that we need a new vector 3 now, and I just assigned a random value of -100 and 100 so that it would have some variety and you could actually tell that it was actually spinning in different directions. A little more obvious. Oh, and I guess I didn't really talk about invoke repeating. So we're using invoke repeating as opposed to like a coroutine and like the yield wait for seconds. And you can see here in the tooltip, you call invoke repeating, and then inside you need a string, which is the name of the function or the method. And then you need a float value of time and the float value of which it's going to repeat. And in this case, those are the same. So you could set this to whatever. You could set this to 10f, and the game wouldn't start for, in this case, the game wouldn't start for 10 seconds. Or, you know, vice versa. This could be a different variable. And if you want to control those properties individually, you could set another float variable up here that's public. So we'll go over the cube spawner again, and this time we'll make it less time so that we just get more when it's more exciting. Set it to something like 0.1, and go ahead and play. Oh, one second. Well, they're not getting the force applied to them, the torque applied to them anymore. So I made a mistake somewhere. I guess it's not super important to have that aspect of it in this tutorial. Just pause 1 second so this video doesn't get super long, and then figure it out. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. I shouldn't have been calling it in the update function. It's calling it every frame and not necessarily when the thing is being spawned, so and we just do it down here in the spawn function. Made a little bit more obvious by making it 1,000. So now when we play, you can see that they are spinning in different directions, and it's somewhat random. Alright. And it's probably a lot easier whenever it's only happening on the 1 second interval. And you can't change this in real time. Because the invoke repeating is being called in the start function and not in the update function. If you were to do it in the update, it would well, I think that would work, or it might just make everything go even more crazy. Let's just see for fun. Wow, yeah. So I'm not completely destroy my GPU by doing this. So yeah, it's still not affecting it, but it's calling the repeat function every frame as opposed to. So that's not how you want to use invoke repeating anyways. You want to call it in the start function. But that was fun anyways. Alright, again, I'm Cracked Joe. If you guys have any other requests, please let me know, or if any topics I didn't cover, you can ask questions on the YouTube in the comment section, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Thanks again for watching.